Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. It's a big, big week around here. So big, and the weather's been so bad. There's no Maryland Crab Cake Tour this week. We're going to get it back out. A Cup of Soup or Bowl begins on February 3rd. We're going to be feeding folks who need some food. We're going to be talking to lots and lots of community charity folks. That happens during a Cup of Soup or Bowl week. Now, whether the Ravens are going to be there or not, got to go to Buffalo, see what happens in Kansas City. Sal Capaccio joins us here from Western New York, where I have spent many days and nights. Sal, I was thinking back to my first trip to Orchard Park, and it was the Jay Schrader, Art Shell, K-Gun, March of Bro. I think Andre Reed's still catching touchdowns. I think Bruce Smith is still landing on Jay Schrader. And y'all still haven't won a Super Bowl. We've had two. We didn't have a franchise then, right? So I think of this trip and going up there different than the plague thing that happened a couple of years ago. Two MVPs. I can't think of a finer football game in the history of the Ravens. And I think about Mile High Miracle going out playing Peyton Manning. But for this generation, for where we are, that's been a dozen years. And I know I'm not going to bring up the Norwood thing or any of that, but that's been 100 years. But this is as good as it gets talking about football and doing this at this point, because I have no idea who's going to win.
Yeah, I mean, and the betting lines are saying the same thing. It's pretty much an even game, depending on where you look. I guess I think the Bills started favorites, the Ravens are favorites, but I think that what adds to this game for all those reasons and intrigue is these two teams have kind of butted their heads against the ceilings recently, right? And they've had playoff failures against Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs, or whoever. And now you have Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, and there's this raging debate between the two fan bases on who deserves the MVP. They're both unbelievable talents. They're incredible. They're going to finish 1 and 2 in whatever order. It is often called the best weekend of the year in the NFL, the AFC and the NFC divisional round. And the NFL decided to put this game as their showcase game on the best weekend of the year. That shows you how important it is to the league.
You voted for Josh Allen, right?
I don't have a vote.
I don't have a vote, but you have a vote on the radio. I mean,
I would say this. This is how I've framed it. I'm going to be admittedly tell you that I'm probably biased because I'm closer to the situation. I see what Josh Allen has done for the Buffalo Bills, but I have zero issue with anybody who votes for Lamar Jackson. If I had a vote, I'd probably vote for Josh Allen. I think I would, because I do think the Bills have to lean on Josh more than the Ravens have to lean on Lamar. But Lamar does have better statistics. There's no doubt about that. What I hate is how this has become, Nestor, we got to tear down the other guy to prop up our guy. This isn't it reminds me of dirty political ads, right? And I hate those.
Not my style. It's why I stopped taking
yeah.
phone calls 15 years ago. I can't. I'm not even in that. I sort of joke about it. Luke and I spent 8 minutes of airtime this week talking about it, and that's cool because that's what it's worth to me. But the divisiveness of sports, I'm 40 years into this. I don't get it, and I will not participate in it.
I like that.
Yeah.
Good for you. And I think
the country's about to go to hell on Monday morning. So I can't, this still needs to be fun for the next couple of days until it is or isn't. And based on what I saw with the Vikings the other day and the Pack, when you get eliminated this time of year, I don't need to tell you, it's happened to you guys a bunch. It's happened to us a whole lot lately, too much under the Harbaugh administration lately. But, the atmosphere and where it is. And then there's still Kansas City over the hill for either one of these franchises. I mean, this is as competitive as it's been. I mean, we have Hall of Fame quarterbacks, Hall of Fame operations here all the way through.
Yeah.
I mean, so much so that Tomlin can't find a quarterback, right? I mean, Bengals couldn't even get in the playoffs. And I'll make a case for their quarterback that if you gave me any of them over a 10-year body of work, I'd take him. I just would, because I'm old school like that. But he's not even playing. So that's how hard it is to get to this game, and that's how hard it is to wake up Monday morning either on the good side of we're going to Kansas City, good for us, or we're going to Cancun.
Yeah, or maybe you're hosting a game. If for some weird way and some weird thing happens and the Texans beat the Chiefs, the winner of this game knows that they'll be hosting the AFC Championship game, which makes the stakes, even higher.
We'll go to bed Saturday night knowing that, right?
That's right. I think for the Bills, having this game in Buffalo matters, obviously. You've been to Orchard Park. You know the atmosphere here. You know what Bills Mafia brings. Having the game down in Baltimore, was a nice, benefit for them in that game and helped them. And the Ravens kicked the Bills' tail for a lot of reasons. But, having the game here in Buffalo, I think obviously makes Bills fans feel better. But certainly the way that the Ravens are playing, you could certainly argue they are playing better football than anybody in the NFL right now.
Sal Capaccio covers the Buffalo Bills as well as anyone. He's at WGR 550. You can find him out at Sal Sports as well. And you can talk some rock and roll with him. Once all this football is over, we can talk about some music and we'll have some fun here. But you said that Bills got their tails kicked for a bunch of reasons. Make the case to make up those 25 points and what happened in that game. Not just that Josh Allen's got the offense working
Mhm.
better, but I think yeah, Milano, different things going on with the defense and how the teams are playing right now. Nobody's playing better than the Ravens, though. That's pretty apparent based on the last 5 weeks and how they've been on national TV and have looked like the team that Eric DeCosta dreamed them to be back in the spring. And more than that, a full health, which Zay Flowers aside, but they've had unbelievable health this year. I've been doing this from the beginning. I've never seen a healthier team.
Well, I would say that's exactly where I'd start. The Bills actually are extremely healthy as well. They're as healthy as they've been in this era of Sean McDermott and Josh Allen going into the playoffs. But however, that game, that's where I'll start with a bunch of reasons. The Bills were listen. Injuries happen. We know that's not an excuse. But if you want to give me some, I'll give you some reasons. The Bills were missing arguably their three best defenders that entire game, and everybody at the second level of their defense. Matt Milano had still not returned. Their middle linebacker Terrell Bernard, who's an excellent player, was out of that game with a pec injury. And Taron Johnson, an all-pro corner, was also out of that game. So they had all three of their second level players missing, and I'd argue maybe most important players on defense, all three of them. On the offensive side, Khalil Shakir, who is their number one receiver, got hurt on the very first drive of the game, and he was basically could not play. He was very hobbled the rest of the game. I think that impacted how the Bills called the game. You go back and look, Sean McDermott's actually been very aggressive on fourth downs this year, but that game he wasn't. I think he was trying to play a conservative game, knowing that, they might have to try to keep the score down because of, the offense was still coming around. It was their second road game of the year with a whole bunch of new receivers. They played it differently. They were a little bit conservative. They ran a trick play. Now, remember, it was 21-10. The Bills had the ball and they were driving. And if they score a touchdown, it's a new game. Bills called trick play. It was a disaster. And there was a turnover, and Josh Allen actually got hurt on the play. And from there, it's just kind of steamrolled after that. There's no doubt the Ravens are playing as good a football as anybody. And it's a tough matchup. And you ask anybody in Buffalo, Nestor, they'd say the Ravens are probably the worst matchup for the Bills because they run the ball so well. And the Bills are just really structured to stop the pass more than the run on defense. They're lighter and more athletic. They're not super big, but that's going to take a lot of effort now to make sure you stop Derrick Henry because I think that's got to be your number one focus. As great as Lamar is, you got to pick your poison. And I think for the Bills, the way that they're built, I think they'd rather focus on stopping Derrick Henry and say, we'll take our chances having Lamar throw the ball because at least then we have a chance if we can get him, running around or put the ball in the air.
Sal, for Derrick Henry, I've been patting myself on the back because both the trading deadlines the last couple of years, I'm like, they need a better running back. They can't have Lamar, even though he ran the ball 15 times the other day, 10 in the first quarter against the Steelers. That was so 2018 and 19, and when they were playing the metallic brand of football where all the little metallic parts go one way, it's Marshall Yanda blowing people up. The passing game has matured here, no question about it. I don't know what the weather conditions. I mean, I know it's going to be 18 degrees. I don't know if it's going to be snowing on Sunday night. I know Lamar doesn't love the cold. Nobody loves the cold. Defenders don't like tackling in the cold. The Derrick Henry thing was always curious to me. And, I have this fun tweet that I've been sharing that if the Ravens were to get Derrick Henry, they would be, my word was unstoppable. And it was just a stupid tweet, I threw out a year and a half ago. And now that he's here, it feels a little unstoppable. Now, I would say this, they threw it in on their offensive line in the offseason with Zeitler and Morgan Moses, and they decided to go younger. And it's worked out okay when it's worked out okay, when they haven't been blown up by special defenders. I mean, the Raiders and the Browns had mismatches all day long, one mismatch, and it was over with. That's all it took to beat them. 3 and 4 win teams beating them. So there have been teams that have had the number, but the Derrick Henry thing, once it gets going on a cold night, it becomes harder to stop, and especially if you don't stop it, and if the Ravens don't fumble. And there's this whole thing of them living in 2nd and 2 and 2nd and 3 and 2nd and 1 with these long first down runs that they just keep moving the chains and shortening the game. I think this is a tough matchup for Buffalo, but I am very concerned about Josh Allen against the Ravens defense, which hasn't seen this kind of thing in a while. I mean, Russell Wilson's one thing, but Jalen Hurts came in here and beat him 5 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, Josh Allen loves the cold. Josh Allen, I believe, has the greatest record in NFL history in the playoffs in freezing temperatures. He also has the lowest interception rate in the history of the NFL playoffs with any quarterback that started as many games as he has. He loves playing in the cold. He's been incredible throughout, at least, in most playoff games. He wasn't perfect in every game. Certainly a couple of years ago against Cincinnati, team didn't play all that great in a snowy game. We know that. And Josh is playing, as we said, at an MVP level. And the thing about this offense for the Bills is they have this mantra called everybody eats. You can't look around and say, we're going to take away Stephon Diggs because he's not here anymore. And there's no one guy. You can't even, you want to take away Khalil Shakir? Well, here comes Amari Cooper. Want to take Amari Cooper? Here comes Keon Coleman. You want to take away Keon Coleman? Here come their tight ends. How about the tight ends? Well, here come the running backs. Really, the Bills have done it with everybody eating. They've scored over 30 points a game. Now, I think it's Detroit, Buffalo, and Baltimore for the top 3 scoring teams in the NFL. And we know the Bills have done it with just kind of a cast of characters that really just everybody could do their job on any given play, and that's what makes them so tough to defend. When they went to Baltimore in Week 4, Baltimore was struggling a little bit on defense on the passing side. They shut the Bills down. Then they moved Kyle Hamilton back to deep safety, and we see the results. They're a terrific team against the pass as well. The Bills are going to have their hands full. But I would say that one area the Bills have been absolutely dominant, and this showed up on Sunday. Their offensive line they took apart a really good Denver front, and they ran the ball for 210 yards. And I think that's going to be a challenge even for Baltimore to stop, because the Bills are going to want to run the ball. They're going to want to keep the Ravens offense off the field. And the Bills have been the best team in the league in turnover differential. They don't give you the ball. This whole thing about Josh Allen over the last, whatever years of his career about, turnovers and, things like that. Josh Allen has 6 interceptions, 2 fumbles on the year. That's it. The Bills lead the league in a plus 24 turnover differential. Nobody's even close to that. They don't give you the ball, and they do take the ball away. So I think in this game, it's going to come down to that, which is which defense can kind of get 1 or 2 extra stops, whether that's a turnover or forcing a punt, to give their offense an ability to try and score some points.
Well, turnovers happen on 4th and 2 if you can stop it, because there's going to be plenty of 4th down going on in this game. Yeah. We've seen that in the playoffs. Almost like baseball players, the strategy changes a little bit. Certainly everything about baseball strategy, pitching changes, but football, it's a little bit different, especially cold weather and running the ball. Sal Capaccio is here from Buffalo, New York. Now, you're not a Buffalonian, right? You're transplanted, or you are from there?
No, I grew up here in Cheektowaga, which is where the Buffalo airport is. What Buffalo's very it might be like a little Baltimore.
I love Cheektowaga, Super 8, right there at Amherst. Yeah, I know my way around Buffalo.
Wow, there's a lot of suburbs here. It's a smaller city, a lot of suburbs. I grew up here. I went to Syracuse University.
I knew you went to Syracuse, and I thought you may have come from the east part of the state.
I did move to Florida, and I lived there for 16 years. And I always say I'm the only man ever who voluntarily left Florida to move back to Buffalo, New York.
Did it involve a girl?
No, it was a radio career.
Okay.
It was a career. I started my radio career at a small radio station in south of Sarasota. But after about 4 or 5 years, when you're, and all of us in this business, you butt your head against the ceiling, you think, okay, is this it? Like, I really want, especially when you're young. I actually, I grew up an athlete and I was coaching. I actually left radio, and for 10 years, I was a high school football coach and social studies teacher. And I was actually the head girls track coach.
Let's stop everything and let's go to civics right now. Civics for 100 with Sal Capaccio.
I don't want to get that in a political season. I definitely don't want to do that.
You don't do Schoolhouse Rock with me right now? No?
We can do not civics. We can talk about
It's a good week for civics, though. I mean, come on now. I mean, it really is. It's a good week for the Constitution.
It was actually great. I taught I taught high school seniors, and part of it was I did teach U.S. history, and I taught it was half the year economics, half the year government. I love teaching government, actually, and teach how it operates. But it was great anyway, and I was coaching football and teaching, but I always wanted to get back into radio. I loved my hometown of Buffalo, and I married a woman. I met her down there. She's from Germany originally, my wife, Jana, and Jana said, Buffalo weather's like Germany weather, so if you really want to go back and follow your dream, and we did it.
Sal Capaccio is here giving us. I loved your life story. Anytime I bring a guest on, like, who's this guy? What does he know? I
have an interesting story, and I like to share that story, Nestor, to a lot of people who. I was 37 when I actually moved back to Buffalo to restart my radio career. I worked part-time at WGR Sports Radio 550, and I substitute taught in the city of Buffalo every day just to get by. And now here I am 11 years later as, building a brand that I've built, and I'm on an NFL sideline every Sunday and traveling with the team and the full-time beat reporter and sideline reporter.
Well, man, that's all. The thing I was going to ask you about, because I will get back to the game, but I do want to talk about the community. I have friends in Depew and Cheektowaga and Amherst and North
Yeah.
Tonawanda and blah, 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 and on Lackawanna. I mean, and all the media people, in, the Jaworskis and
Yeah.
the Vic
Ron's
Carucci's and the
great.
people that live there, right? But
Yeah.
but I have friends that have been there forever. My friend Rasig, Mike Bellani, ran the Bisons and all that.
Man.
So
Yeah.
all of these years of coming up there and being a part of it, I still fly into Buffalo almost once a year because I go to Toronto. I love
Yeah.
Toronto. I love Rush. I love Geddy Lee. I like
Love it.
I come up for
Well, I'm a
concerts.
drummer, so obviously,
Right.
me as
So
well, Neil
yeah,
Peart,
so
obviously one of the
I come
greatest.
in, I hit some pancakes, I got a little egg diner, a little broken yolk joint over by the airport with my buddy.
Yep.
And then but I go through Buffalo every because you go through the Peace Bridge unless you're going to go north up toward Niagara, but I usually go through the city just to vibe it out. It's always a little gray. It's not it looks a little bit like Harrisburg. It's a really small city community and from the minute I land there, there's Josh Allen ads and Bill's stuff everywhere in a tiny little airport. And from the minute you go out, it's Buffalo's different. And I don't mean Green Bay different. I just mean different in the way that the Bills are. I'm looking behind you. You have some picture of Josh Allen that looks like a family portrait that if it were
That's fun.
Fidel
That's that funny
Castro, it would
thing.
be on the wall in
No,
Cuba.
that's that
So
funny thing from like Step Brothers, is it? And it's Josh and Keon Coleman.
Right. It looks like a family portrait
Yeah.
that was taken at Olin Mills,
Yeah.
but that's what the Bills are. It reminds me of what the Colts were here in a
Yeah.
community thing. And I have such admiration. And more than that, it's different than the Lions winning or even the Vikings winning because of the communities. I just think Buffalo is this set off to against the water. It gets dumped on snow. It's up against Canada. All the bad things
Mhm.
that have happened to your football team and whatever, and even Bon Jovi trying to steal it. I want you to win. I mean, I don't necessarily want you to out us this week and win, but I do want Buffalo to like have a parade. I want to see what the hell happens when Buffalo has a parade in February. I really
Yeah,
do.
we'd love for that to happen. And, obviously, as you know the community well, we also have a big hockey city, and we're going through a really tough time with our hockey team as well.
Dude,
And
I
right
was in
now,
Vegas the night that the Stars won
oh,
and the puck didn't go in with Hasek. Don't start me on that. I remember
yeah,
that. Buffalo got screwed.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think we're known for in this community, the heartbreak in sports, right? And Baltimore, with the Colts leaving in the '80s, and getting a team back, and then finally winning a Super Bowl and a couple more or whatever, another Super Bowl. I think that it's kind of it changes the perception of the city, of the fan base, of the sports teams, no doubt. And we love the Bills here. They're a part of the fabric. I always say Buffalo is really kind of known for like four things: snow and weather, Niagara Falls, of course, chicken wings, maybe number one, and the Buffalo Bills. And really, even the Sabres, but they're not very good right now. But people love their sports teams. Are part of the fabric of the community. And everything you mentioned earlier, the four Super Bowl losses and wide right, we went through 17 years of not going to the playoffs, 17-year playoff drought. And I think it brought everybody even closer together. And in that time, the whole thing, Bills Mafia, became a thing and created. And now we have this guy named Josh Allen, who they have cereal boxes of Josh's Jacks, right?
Family portrait
I
of him
mean,
behind you
I mean
there
that's
in a
crazy, right?
cardigan. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, now you have him. He's amazing in what he's done to put this team in this city and on the map. And we're very sensitive to a lot of that because we get made fun of with our weather and our teams losing. And there's a very big sense here of us versus them mentality in Buffalo because of that. I think even more so than you get in a lot of other cities because we try to tell everybody how great the city is. And you've been here. It's the city of good neighbors. We help each other. There's snowstorms. We had a snowstorm 2 years ago where close to 30 people died because they froze to death in their cars or trying to get somewhere because the snow came so much. And you hear all the heroic stories that go on in situations like that. And that's who we are. And I think that we wear that we're very prideful. We wear it on our sleeves emotionally. And when it comes time for a game like this, it really, really comes out about how much of a swing it could be for this community.
Well, and for me, who was up there watching the Oilers lose with
Yeah.
Warren Moon and watching them win and beat the Raiders back in the day, there was that period where there weren't games in January in Buffalo
That's right.
ever. And
Yeah.
we've never not had it, right? We didn't have football, had it stolen. Team comes back, Billick, Ray, John Ogden, boom. We win a Super Bowl. And then from that moment on, we call it Festivus here, right? Like
Yeah.
it's this time of year, the purple lights and all that. I don't want to say it's almost passe here because it's not amongst the 20 and 30-year-olds who haven't won. My dad lifted Ordell Bracey in '58, right? And then there was the Johnny U and Super Bowl III, Super Bowl V. I mean, we've had these eras of football here that have ended with championships. I mean, like we won 58, 59, won again in 71, lost our team and still won again, as the century started. And I think for Buffalo, there's no one in a Buffalo closet that's ever experienced it. I feel like Josh Allen's your best hope at this
Yeah.
point. And I feel like it's games like this that for your community, I remember when it really mattered here. I'm not being a dick, but there were 10,000 seats available on Saturday. It was 25 degrees here. People in Buffalo aren't thinking like that. And I mean,
Mm.
I was sort of shocked when I saw the blimp shot of the new stadium next to the old stadium. I'm like, how did they ever get the new stadium built? Because it's in the way of the tailgating.
Well, it's actually going to be a part of it. There was a lot of talk about that stadium going downtown. There was a huge debate, and there's a lot of reasons why. Money obviously is a big deal. But one of the things that they really wanted to maintain is the tailgating atmosphere. And as you know, Orchard Park has a lot of space for tailgating, and a lot of the old stadium will be used some of the, for the parking lot. They actually are, believe it or not, Nestor, in the new stadium, they're making the parking spots bigger to have more space to tailgate for people,
Perfect.
which is amazing, right? But there's a lot of
Way
room in that
God meant
area.
for it to be. That's a
Yeah.
well-planned strategy. That's a good use of
Yeah.
people's money in New
We
York.
can't
Good.
wait for that stadium. It's going to be great. This stadium, it's actually there's not a bad seat in the house, but it's an old stadium. It's over 50 years old. There's one tunnel in, one tunnel out. There's a lot of issues with it, and the
There's a
reason why you
lot of
needed a new
issues
one.
with it. When
Yeah.
you leave the press box and have to get down to the
Yes.
to the
Right. Now, right for us there are, but for fans, you walk into that lower bowl and there's not a bad seat in the house.
Oh, it's a great. I mean,
It's a great spot to
Sal,
watch a football game.
listen, this is full disclosure. I spent a half an hour on Monday morning, A, trying to talk my wife into going, B, trying to talk Luke into going because we're going to fly to Kansas City if we win this week. And, my press credential, I'm not really a media member anymore, so I have to sit out in the stands and pay for a ticket, which I've never had. I've done that a million times. And I think it's going to be a glorious experience. Cold as hell. I mean, if it were 38, I'd do it. 18's a little like crazy for me. I was at the Mile High. I've been at cold games. I don't need any more pelts on my wall about, as I'm getting older, I don't like being cold. But for people to go, it doesn't feel cold when you're there because it's
Yeah.
benchy, it's closed in. It's the way Lambeau was before they made a spaceship on top of it. You've made half a spaceship before Ralph Wilson left us on yours, but it still has the vibe that it had at Rich Stadium in 1987 for me.
Oh yeah, and the new stadium, I don't know if you know this. It doesn't have a dome. People can lament that, but there was a lot of things that happened, and one of them was they polled the season ticket holders and others and said, and basically their feedback was, "Hey, we don't mind being cold. We just don't want to be wet." So there's going to have a canopy, and 64% of the seats are going to be covered.
That's
So
what you
unless
do in
you're
Germany, where your wife's from.
yeah, yeah, and that's where actually, if you ever been to London for Tottenham Hotspur, it's modeled after that stadium actually, with the canopy. And if you're lower to the field, you won't be covered. But the stadium now is kind of like this, where the stands come up and you're on the third deck. The new stadium's pitched like this, so you're up top. You're gonna be right on top of the field, kind of looking down, and that's to keep a lot of the noise in, the people close to it. It's even going to be more of a home field advantage. And if you are on the area where you're not covered, you also will have, though, however, the ability to go underneath into the club area. You'll go up and you'll be able to get warm. So they kind of have a good compromise, but they have a lot of incredible technology when it comes to the weather and snow removal and wind. It's called wind confusion, Nestor. I'm not kidding you. Right now, when the wind comes into this stadium, it goes down to the bowl, it swirls around. But in the new stadium, it'll be standing up, and there's actually have this three-prong mesh that when the wind hits it, it'll actually make it dissipate before it gets down to the field. It's going to be incredible.
Sal Capaccio, that's science in addition to social studies and
There you
civics and
go.
football. We've had it all. Back onto the field. You can find Sal at Sal Sports up in Buffalo, New York. He is at WGR 550 when he's not rocking or teaching and digitally creating. I'm looking at the Instagram here. Stopping the run.
Yep.
The Ravens have done it as well as anyone on the front, and you said that the Bills are going to want to run the football. It's a cold night. We get it all.
Yeah.
Give me the success rate on that and why that's going to work now. Because from a beating the Ravens standpoint, some teams have thought, yeah, we'll try to run it, and then they just wind up stopping because they get behind. Now it's
Sure.
21-7
No doubt.
and they have to stop. But more
Well,
than that, it hasn't. The Ravens haven't been run out of the gym by anybody, literally.
no, and I don't think the Bills would think they could do that. But it's for the Bills, it's not about, oh my God, we're gonna run for 200 yards like they did last week. That was a surprise. For the Bills, it's about controlling the game and not letting you just then tee off on Josh Allen. Hey, I mean, James Cook has 1,000 yards on the year. The Bills have three really good running backs, all that can do things in the passing game as well. And that's what also kind of gets teams to back off a little bit. You want to throw the ball to James Cook or Ray Davis, who's actually in concussion protocol right now, or Ty Johnson. The Bills can do that as well. The Bills went into last week's game against the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos were, let me get their numbers here on defense last week. We're just going to throw this up real quick. Excuse me. Going into the game, the Denver Broncos were the number 2 ranked rush defense, only behind the Ravens. And the Bills ran for 210 yards on them because they just controlled the game. And they said, we're going to make sure that we keep ourselves in manageable situations and stay on the field. I agree. It's going to be a very difficult task, but that's what the Bills will want to do. But I would say, too, though, the Bills' offensive line may be playing as good as any offensive line in the NFL right now. They really can do a lot of things. They have 2 outstanding tackles in Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown. They have a really great offensive line coach in Aaron Cromer. So I think both teams will want to run the ball against the other. And we know that Derrick Henry can, and he did that against the Buffalo Bills. And sure, you have Josh Allen, and if you're not running, you're gonna have to throw the ball, and they're very comfortable with that. But for the Bills, it's not about the numbers in the running game. It's about controlling the game with the running game. But they were just able to absolutely bulldoze a really good Denver front last week.
Also icing Lamar. Let Lamar sit on the bench with his
Yeah,
jacket
that's right.
on and
That's
sit
right.
there for 8 minutes and
100%.
wait his turn. I mean, running the ball, if you can't stop it, even if it's not about Derrick Henry, boat racing and running 60 yards for a touchdown. I'm talking about 6 and 8 yards and a class of flurries or whatever it's going to be. Last
Or
thing
rubber
for you,
pellets.
I want to hear your opinion on Lamar from 7 years ago to 4 years ago to now to this week, to seeing him in the flesh, to facing elimination at his hands. There's a point for me from the day he was drafted, and I'm unabashed. I've been on the radio every minute of every day here for 40 years. I'll stand up, say I was right, I was wrong. I didn't love him running into linebackers. Um,
Sure.
I haven't seen a lot of quarterbacks get better with accuracy. I mean, that's what they thought of Kyle Bowler here. I mean,
I think
the
Josh
road,
Allen might be even higher on that as far as how much he got better for the accuracy.
the road is littered with quarterbacks that
Yes.
I can fix him and I can make him more accurate, right?
Yeah.
Because he's unpolished and he's 21. Some guys can get better. Lots of, I mean, the Geno Smiths and the reclamation. I mean, Sam Darnold until Sunday night
Yep.
happened, right? So I'm
Okay.
for all of that. But when it comes to Lamar, I always thought that mesh point thing, from the minute I saw it with Mark Ingram 7 years ago, I thought, ball's going to wind up on the ground too much. Just in a general
Yeah.
sense. 7 years in, that's the thing I was totally wrong about, because it's not just the 4 interceptions and 41 touchdowns that our fan base can make the MVP candidacy debate, or the 2,000 yards of Henry, or the 900 yards that Lamar's run for. To me, it's the turnover thing. And they turned the ball over 3 times against the Steelers and fell on it the first time around Christmas Day, right? So falling on fumbles, not having fumbles. This has not been a problem in this franchise, whether it was Roman running the offense, whoever the center's been, Linderbaum before that. There's been some snappy issues and shotgun and whatnot. But in a general sense, this team has penalty problems, but not yips. And I think that's been the most shocking part of the Lamar thing for me, as well as just how great he's been athletic and all of that. But I thought that would create turnover problems.
So let me give you my view on Lamar and its ties into Josh and that draft class and these quarterbacks, which are, I think one thing I've really learned here is how much organization and situation matters. And I think both Josh and Lamar went to the really, really good places. And that's why we're seeing and we saw the growth in both these guys. Why is Sam Darnold I know last night aside, right? In the last couple of weeks aside, why is Sam Darnold now suddenly playing the way he is, or Geno Smith, as you mentioned? We've seen these guys have these reclamations. Well, they're in different situations where I think you can look back and say those teams they were with, and in those cases, the Jets, by the way, both of them, they have so much turnover, so much chaos. There's no stability there. You have the Buffalo Bills at the time they drafted Josh, they didn't have stability because Sean had just come in the year before. But now you have what every NFL team covets here in Buffalo, which is an owner, a GM, and a head coach on the same page with development, with vision. And they did a great job with Josh. Lamar, same thing. To me, the Ravens are a model franchise for how stable they are. And their head coach, John Harbaugh, who's been there for so long, and their ownership and their front office. And they really created a structure to develop these guys. And I think it matters. I've always said this, Nestor, and I believe this. If Josh Allen had been drafted by the Jets, he might not be a bust, but he certainly wouldn't be Josh Allen we know today. If Sam Darnold had been drafted by the Bills, he wouldn't be Josh, but I think he'd be a very serviceable, good quarterback. They would have brought him along the right way. And I think what I saw from Lamar was right away, especially that second year in 2019, where he just blows the league away and like his athleticism, because they put him in a great situation. They developed him the right way. Situation matters. And
Well, they put the
I,
right players around him. No one else wanted Willie Snead to be cracking down blocking in 2019. I mean, I saw that part of how they've built everything around him where other teams would have. They didn't
right.
want him because they didn't want to rebuild their project. Even 2 years ago, when the Colts could have had him, the Falcons, to say any of those teams could have just overwhelmed with money when he was restricted, made the Ravens really pay through the nose.
Sure.
Nobody did that because nobody wanted to rebuild their program around him.
Well, and that has to come with the not only the vision you have, but how you structure your roster. And again, to me, the two words I use all the time in Buffalo, I and Chris Brown, who does our play-by-play on the Bills radio network, says this all the time. We're both very much about this. Player development in this organization in Buffalo is as good as it is in anywhere in the league, and it's as good as it has been in the night since the 1990s or ever in this organization. It's probably the same in Baltimore in a lot of ways. I get it, right? But I know from our standpoint here, that's what I think you have in Baltimore. Player development. When you have a GM and an owner, a GM, and a head coach, and I know they've had a little bit of change there in Baltimore. We have an owner, GM, and head coach that are on the same page. It allows your GM and your front office to say, we can draft a guy or bring in a guy. He could stay in the practice squad for a year or two. And when it's his time, he's going to be ready to play. And you have to have that vision. When you're constantly changing your GM, your head coach, your system, and you're going from 3-4 to 4-3, you're going from different offensive coordinators. But that's what makes Lamar so unique as well. In Baltimore, as opposed to Buffalo. Now, in the last few years, Josh has had different OCs because of Brian Daboll moving on, and then they fired Ken Dorsey. In Baltimore, you've had even more OCs, right? And yet here he is, incredibly talented, no matter regardless of the offense they put around him. I'm a big Lamar fan. I am. I'll go back to what I said earlier. I just think it's a shame that the two fan bases have to trash the other guy. I think we should all really appreciate how special it is to be able to watch these two talents right now and what they're able to do in the NFL.
Don't trash anybody out there. And if you leave trash in the Buffalo parking lot, pick it up this weekend. Heading up to Buffalo, we're shuffling off for the biggest football game we've had here in a long, long time. Sal Capaccio covers all things Buffalo Bills, does it as well as anyone at Sal Sports. You can also find him at WGR. He's out on the sidelines at 5:50. If you see Murph, tell him I said hello, old school. And bundle up on those sidelines down there, man.
Always, man.
Right?
I've
What's your secret?
I've
You
been
got
in
the
colder.
heated, the little
Yeah.
battery opera. What do you got going on?
I do. I got gloves with I could put a battery in the pocket here, the zip. But my wife gave me these great things. They're really awesome. I use them for the first time. You just turn them on, and after you're charged, and you can put them right in your palm. I also go near that big heater on the sidelines, but I learned my lesson. That heater that they have that looks like a missile, it is so hot. I actually burnt my glove down to the insulation one time. So you have to be very careful. I've seen people burn their pant legs. Their
Don't
shoes
put your
have
face
melted.
near it. Jesus.
You got to be very careful down there. But I bundle up. I've been in colder weather than 18. It'll be cold, no doubt. I'm not dismissing that, but it's kind of what you do when you're in Buffalo or even other places. In Chicago on Christmas Eve, just a few years ago, was the coldest I think I've ever been on the sidelines. It might have been about -10, -12 with the wind chill. It was incredible. So you just and in that game I wore ski goggles because the wind was so bad. It was like your eyes were watering on the sidelines.
It's the wind, really, right?
Yeah,
As much as it's anything. Dude, bundle up. I mean, it's going to be a great
I
Sunday night,
will.
great night of football. I love having you on the program. Maybe one day we'll hit a U2 show together at the new
Love
Buffalo
it.
Stadium or something like that, all right?
Hey, for sure. I know they're going to bring a lot of big acts into town, no doubt about it.
Well, I know my way to Buffalo, and I know
There you
my
go.
way. You can take me on a little wing tour if I come up there.
I,
All right.
I absolutely promise.
We'll
I will,
start with
buddy.
Frank and Teresa, and we'll work our way down Maine. He
You
is
got it.
Sal Capaccio. I am Nestor. We're getting ready for some great football. Luke's out in Owings Mills all week long. Maryland Crab Cake Tour returns to the Libs Grill on February 12th. We're calling that the day after the parade around here. I'm Nestor. We are WNST AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking. Baltimore positive.